Welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson.
I'm Shannon Penrod.
And it's good to see you, friend.
Thank you. It's good to see you too. I feel like I've been away forever. We did shows last week.
Right.
We did a Wednesday and Thursday. So for all of you, it's like, I'm here and I've been here. But I left here on Friday and went on a whirlwind tour
of theme parks.
And you guys know how sick I was last week.
Right.
I was like, death warmed over. But my son was turning 14 on Monday and he did 4 amusement parks in 7 days. I did 3 of them with him. And
amusement park hangover?
I'm still there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm having a hard time being here because I'm still there. I had a great time. We've had family visiting, and I got to meet the newest member of our family,
Good.
who was just the most precious thing ever.
Your new niece.
I said hello to Miss Ellie and Miss Addie at the top of the show.
Okay.
But we have a new family member adopted from Colombia, Miss Addie.
Okay.
And oh my gosh, it was so spectacular to see how much she fell in love with my son.
Yeah.
That she says, me Jem, me Jem, and is stuck to his side.
So
and that
sweet.
is so heartwarming. But we have seen everything that there is to see practically in Southern California for amusement parks. And I don't ride rides, but I feel like I'm on a ride.
I bet you do.
Yeah,
I bet you
but
do.
it was really, really fun. And we did a little bit of a live feed from Disneyland on Sunday about some of the passes. I'm going to be covering more of that because you've been to an amusement park with me. If you know how to work it and what to do, it's much more fun. If you go to an amusement park with a kiddo who's on the spectrum or a kid with special needs and you don't know which way is up and what's happening,
right. It can be miserable.
You will have a miserable time. And I did that once at Disneyland, took Jem and paid the small fortune to get in. And, we got right to the front of the storybook ride and they said, oh, the ride is closed. It broke down. And my child started kicking the little girl next to us. He was like 2.5. And we left in tears.
Right.
Because they were like, you need to get that kid under control. And I said, this is not the happiest place on earth and we're never, ever coming back. And I think I posted something on Facebook and somebody said, well, did you know about the past? Did you know about?
Yeah.
And I went, what? So it's all about information.
It is.
And I don't think that any of the theme parks do a great job of telling you what the information is on their own. I think you need the inside scoop. So I'm trying to give it to you and I'll give you more in the coming weeks. We'll
Sounds
talk about
good. So let's talk about a few things in the news. On abcnews.go.com, there's a study about baby teeth providing some clues about why some children develop autism and others, sometimes even their twins, don't. And what they've done is they've looked at the small study, it said, which was out of the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, examined baby teeth from 32 sets of twins to see if levels of lead and other metals correlated with an increased risk of developing autism. And what they found was that there was an increased level of metal in the twins, in the ones with autism.
Yeah. But, it's so interesting as we keep looking at the twin studies.
Lead, I'm sorry. I said, lead, metal, same thing.
We keep looking at the twin studies and there are still questions that arise. One of the biggest twin studies that was ever done was the Claire Lajeunche twin study that was done several years ago that showed us for the first time definitively, because people are like, is it environmental or is it genetic? And, she did the biggest twin study of the time and showed definitively that it is not exclusively one or the other. But now we're honing in more and more because what we find is that occasionally we have twins that have been raised in the exact same environment, that have the exact same genetic makeup, but one of them has autism and the other one doesn't. And it's tricky, but I do think that this is interesting. But what I want to know, first of all, is like how it could be that you would think that if one twin gets exposed to metals and the other one doesn't, so what's the difference? And my question is it the body's ability, does one of them have a protective mechanism that prevents them from storing the heavy metals and the other one doesn't?
Right.
And I think that's going to be but they're seeing that one of the twins has more exposure to metal than the other?
It says lead levels were consistently higher from 10 weeks before birth to 20 weeks after birth in children with autism spectrum disorder than their non-autism spectrum disorder counterparts. The greatest difference was observed at 15 weeks after the twins were born. Lead levels were 1.5 times higher in children with ASD than in their co-twins.
Yeah.
So, but they also found out that manganese, is that how you say it? Manganese?
Yes.
Levels were consistently lower in children with ASD during the critical window, 10 weeks prenatal to birth, and then 5 to 20 weeks after birth. So the levels of manganese, which I guess is a healthy substance that we're supposed to have certain levels of.
They're in most multivitamins.
Okay, we're 2.5 times lower in ASD cases.
Interesting.
So a lack of healthy.
I'm waiting for somebody to be able to put all the pieces together. I'm still very interested in the L. reuteri studies that finally, and you're going to start to see more probiotics that have L. reuteri in them. And I'm wondering now, has somebody put it together? Does L. reuteri help to keep your manganese higher?
Interesting.
At some point, I hope the scientists are talking to each other, because we see all these studies and I go, and I hope that they're talking to each other.
Right.
Fingers crossed. Okay. Serious subject.
Yes, a serious subject out of the Love and Autism conference organizer who sent this out about suicide and autism. First of all, I didn't realize suicide is the second leading cause of death for those between 10 and 24 in the general population.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Each day there's an average of over 5,240 attempts by young people grades 7 to 12. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S. The suicide rate in autism is 40% higher than the general population.
It's frightening, because I think we all think that's not what's happening and that it couldn't happen to us. This scares me to death. It's just the very idea of this. But what I love is in this article, they've given 13 lessons on autism for the autism community. You want to take the first one?
On suicide, yes. Well, first of all, they're saying it happens more than you think, which is what we just said. Between 10 to 66% of individuals with autism report having thought of taking their life, suicide ideations at some point in their life. Between 10 to 33% report attempting suicide at some point in their life. So, as we said, it's 40% higher than in the general population is number one. So it happens more than you think.
And number two is that it might look and sound a little bit different in the autism community.
Right.
That it isn't necessarily going to be a declaration. It can be very vague, and that it really can be confusing. That if the person hasn't been identified as somebody who's suffering from depression, you may not hear it as something that is a suicide. So you really have to be present and looking at everything and taking it all very seriously.
Exactly. And it says it doesn't make you a bad person if you've thought about it. It also doesn't make you a bad person if your child has had suicidal thoughts. Suicide happens when people lose hope. It's not a weakness or a deficit in character. So you need to figure that out.
And number four is that you matter. And I think this is true on all sides of it, that you matter, your ability to be able to talk to the person who's having suicidal thoughts and letting them know that they matter, that there are people who care about them, that they're important, and that there are people who are willing to talk to them is super important.
Yes. Talking about suicidal feelings is a way to give it less power, not more. Silence increases its power, so that's important to remember.
It's important for them to know that they're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And for you, if you're dealing with your child having depression or suicidal thoughts, that you're not alone. This is a hard one, because a lot of times the first person you go to isn't the person who gives you the help and support.
Right.
But persevere. You're not alone. Let them know that they're not alone.
And it's okay if you can't manage it alone. You don't have to, nor should you. Depression has a scary way of clouding judgment, limiting our worldview. So you need to you need to get help from a professional.
It's super important that we make it clear to our kids, especially teenagers. We've seen that addiction is has a very high incidence. That all people tend to think, if I'm depressed, using drugs and alcohol will help me to feel better, but in fact, it becomes an intensifier.
Definitely.
For suicidal feelings. And we've got to make that clear to our kids, that drinking and drugs will not make it better.
Relationships matter. Loneliness increases depression and decreases self-esteem and life satisfaction. So the relationship parts are hugely important, still getting our kids to socialize.
Absolutely, because if you feel like you're part of a tribe, you feel like you belong, and
Right.
then, everybody deserves to be heard. Everybody has a story, and it's important for adults who have depression and have gotten through it to be talking about that. You can talk about that with your child and let them know that it's okay to talk about their feelings as
Right.
well.
Conformity hurts. Labels of not normal are pervasive in the autism community. These are damaging, these ideas about the need to conform.
Yeah. And letting our kids know that suicide is not the answer.
Ever.
I recently had a conversation because my son was turning 14, and I'd been on the phone when he was in the car talking with somebody that was teaching ninth graders, and he said, they're so difficult. Ninth graders are so difficult. And I said to him, well, that's the Romeo and Juliet age.
Right.
And he said, what do you mean? And I said, think about Romeo and Juliet. They're experiencing everything for the first time, and they don't understand that tomorrow will come and tomorrow will bring different things.
Right.
And so Romeo and Juliet end up dead at the end of the play. And I said, it's important. I thought, I haven't had this talk with my son. And so we had the talk the other day. I said, you're 14. And everything is going to feel present in this moment.
Right.
And sometimes it I said, I was sick. And I said, sometimes when I get sick, I'm like, have I been sick forever? Have I ever felt well? Was there ever a day? Because your mind can play tricks on you. And I said, so you've got to remember that ending stuff is not the answer. The answer is to wait and see what happens next and to take action. And we need to be clear about that suicide is not the answer.
And we need to understand, finally, that we weren't designed to handle everything. Resilience and coping has limits. And sometimes there's a problem that's more than we can handle.
Yes.
So, once again.
And sometimes there is
professional help.
medication.
Yes.
That can be very helpful.
Yeah.
All right. We thank Love and Autism for
that.
sharing that.
It's very interesting. And there was a happy story in the news that was on Facebook, a Facebook post about a barber's act of kindness towards a boy with autism. The boy, Evan, went to get his hair cut, but he didn't want to stay seated. He was having a really tough time. So Evan's barber, who he had been having his hair cut by for the last 14 years, got someone named Doncha O'Connell, went into the car and with his brother and cut Evan's hair in the car, making him feel at ease. So
we've been hearing more and more of these stories
Right.
of service workers being willing to go the extra mile to be able to help someone.
Yeah.
And I think it's so great when I know that there are people in the autism community who go, enough with the stories about somebody. But you know what? We just had a whole conversation with Dr. Grandpichet about when things are reinforcing, we do more of it.
Yes.
And when people get an attaboy for giving good customer service to anybody, then they want to do better customer service. Yeah. We reported on a barber, Jim the barber, who had gotten on the floor a couple of years ago to cut a little boy named Mason's hair. And so many news outlets, including us, we had him on the show via Skype, made such a big fuss about it. And all these parents started coming to him. He just got the Barber of the Year award in Scotland. And I just think, and now he has a whole series of barbers that he's training to be able to do this kind of work with people. Let's not think that we shouldn't praise people for being kind. Yes, I want to get to the day where kindness is just a matter of fact and it happens and it isn't newsworthy, but in the meantime, why not praise people for the good work that they do?
Definitely
and to this barber,
give them a shout out.
Who went the extra mile and got in the car, God bless him.
God bless him.
Right?
Right.
It's a wonderful thing. I saw on Facebook this morning that a friend of the show, Russell Lehman, who is the autistic poet, he did a post, and check it out on Facebook because he's wanting to share it with everybody, that he was flying, because he speaks all over the place now, and he had a very, very bad experience at an airport and had a meltdown. He's an adult and he's a poet and he's on the spectrum. He had a meltdown and he said he was sobbing in the airport. And one of the workers came over and he said, I don't want to disturb you, but can you tell me what's wrong and how I can help? The guy got him on a flight, got him taken care of. He said he didn't want to fly. He had a pilot come over, talk to him, talk about going the extra mile.
Really?
Made the difference. And he said, my faith in humanity was restored. So Russell Lehman, the autistic poet, check out his thing on Facebook today.
Okay.
It's amazing.
Very good.
We love it when people go the extra mile.
Yes, we do.
And we have a guest today with a very controversial book. There are people who are circulating a petition to have Amazon take the book off of Amazon because they find the title offensive. But we're going to talk with Dara Berger about her book, How to Prevent Autism, about what it's about, why it's important, and why, we'll talk a little bit about why some people might be misinterpreting this and finding it offensive, and what that's about as well.
Okay.
All right, so Dara Berger coming up after these messages. Stick with us.
Welcome back. For the month of June, I figured we'd do some cool things that are kind of like summer camp activities. So the activity we're doing this month is making a shoebox guitar. The materials you'll be needing are an old shoebox, a paper towel roll, a pencil, a stencil, rubber bands, a crayon, and an X-Acto blade, which only the adults will be using. So first things first, I have a shoebox and I painted it just so it's a little bit more interesting. This is an opportunity for your kids to decorate however they choose. They can keep it simple or do some stripes with paint, or you can always use, stickers or tape instead of paint to decorate it. All right, now that I have this, I'm gonna take my stencil, place it on top of the shoebox, and I'm gonna draw a circle somewhere in the center, okay? So now that I have that, I'm gonna take my X-Acto blade, which is why this is for the adults, and cut out the circle. Next, we're going to cut out a smaller circle at the top of our shoebox guitar. The reason we're going to do this is so that we have a place to insert our paper towel roll, aka the stem of the guitar. And I'm going to grab my paper towel roll and I'm going to trace the outside of this so I can cut a hole on the top of this too to stick this in so it just looks a lot more realistic. It won't be usable, but it'll look pretty cool. Now that it's been traced, now I'm going to cut it out with the X-Acto blade. And again, this is something that only the adults should be doing. Now that I have both of the holes cut in this, I'm going to take my guitar strings and place them on. As you can see, it's missing one thing. It's stem. So now I'm going to put this in the hole we just cut out. Alright, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my crayon and put this in. And then after that, your guitar is totally done and you're ready to rock out with your kids. And if you're really cool, you'll make another one so you and your child can play together while doing socio-dramatic play, or work on imitation skills where you play a pattern on here and then they try to repeat it. I hope you and your child had lots of fun making this. And until next time, rock on.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Hello, fellow activists. Last segment, we talked about step 3, get support. Step number 4 is don't compare, run your own race. Now, it's one thing to aspire to be like someone that's really helped their child. We all want to do that. That's really different than keeping up with the Joneses. That only serves to make you envious and full of regret. There will always be someone who has a child with autism who is doing better than yours, and there will always be someone who has a child with autism who's doing worse than yours. One morning I was talking to the mom of a recovered child who told me he had been moved into the gifted class. Well, I had heard that week that my own son, who was in 5th grade, was reading at 1st grade level. Now, I have to admit, I was kind of proud of him until that phone call, which put me over the edge. The green-eyed monster of jealousy. Well, later that same day, I got into the elevator as I was taking my son to clinic. There was a father with his 2 sons, one typical and one with severe autism. He was pretty much nonverbal, but he did make some very strange sounds over and over again. He had bite marks, scratches all over his arms. He wore mittens to protect him from himself. The father, however, had a big smile on his face. Needless to say, the universe was sending me a message that day. Don't compare. Be grateful for the progress your child has made and will continue to make. So until next time, keep running your own race at your own pace. Don't forget to stop for water and keep the faith.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy and I are very excited because joining us via Skype right now is author Dara Berger. She is the author of a new book that's coming out on July 4th, but it's available for pre-order right now. The book is titled How to Prevent Autism. If you're thinking that that's slightly controversial, well, welcome, because we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I want to tell you that Dara is also a documentary filmmaker who's currently working on a film about how to prevent chronic illness in children. She served as a board member and co-chair of the programming committee for the National Autism Association New York Metro chapter for 6 years. She began her career, as a news reporter, producer for a local nightly news program, and subsequently founded her own documentary film production company, which is titled Say It Out Loud Productions. And they focus on covering meaningful issues. So we're really excited to have her here and to talk about this book. Again, it's called How to Prevent Autism. It is available right now for pre-order on Amazon.com and will be available on July 4th. I can't talk today. What is up with me?
I was stumbling earlier too.
I'm tongue-tied. But Dara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
We're thrilled to have you here.
Tell us why you wrote the book.
Well, I wrote the book because I had been, after my son was diagnosed with autism, I immediately jumped into alternative medicine, trying to heal him, and I noticed the healing process in him and myself. And it was in one of those very first visits with his functional medicine doctor that she told me that I could prevent autism in my next child by cleaning out. So I did all these therapies for years, and it worked. My daughter is neurotypical. It was a long road of cleaning out, and I've been sharing that information for years with my son's teachers, therapists, and I just decided, you know what, I need to do this on a larger scale. And I wanted my son's suffering not to be in vain. I wanted to share this information as his legacy.
So you were able to start cleaning out, as you say, your term for it, with you and your son. But is your son still on the autism spectrum, or did you quote?
He is.
He is.
We've made tremendous progress. My
Right.
son suffered a terrible stroke at 18 months, which catapulted him into autism.
Okay.
He lost his speech for 7 years. We regained his speech at 8.5 years old. And, you know, a lot of seasoned speech therapists will tell you that that's kind of shocking. And every day he progresses more and more because we keep doing, you know, special diet, natural therapies, all kinds of supplements, and he's doing great. He progresses every day.
So tell us what the cleaning out entails. What is cleaning out exactly?
Sure. So there's about 3 chapters devoted to that with wonderful practitioners, including Nancy O'Hara, Jerry Brewster, and Maureen McDonald. And a lot of people in the autism community know these wonderful people. And they talk about going on an anti-inflammatory diet, first of all. So take the processed food out. Go organic. Eat whole foods. So you're going to eat fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and meat. So just a very clean diet. That's first of all. Secondly, you're going to get tested for food allergies to see if you have gut issues, food sensitivities, gut dysbiosis, which is an overgrowth of bacteria. And then you're going to take certain supplements to fill your individual nutritional needs. And then lastly, you'll do other types of testing for maybe genetic predispositions that could put you at risk for immune problems or your child.
And you bring up a lot of things in your book, and we should say that it's getting quite a lot of attention. It isn't even out yet, and it's considered controversial. Let's start with the fact that it's considered controversial because you say that autism is treatable and preventable. It's scary to me that in 2016 we still have people who want to argue that autism, first, let's start with treatable, that it's 2017. Yes, I'm living in the past. 2017, thank you. And that people still are confused about whether autism is treatable. And then on top of that, I think there's more people who don't understand that it is preventable, that there have been studies to show that it is preventable even when you are more genetically predisposed. Tell us what your feelings are on this. Is it frustrating for you, Dara, that we're still have so many people who are unwilling to accept these two facts?
Well, it's not frustrating. It's sad to me because then people, just a regular person who gets pregnant for the first time, isn't looking for that information because they don't think it's available. But here we know we have studied the human genome, and there has never been one single gene found to cause autism. That doesn't mean there aren't predispositions, genes that make you susceptible to environmental factors, which is what a lot of people in the field of autism experts believe is going on, that these genes are being turned on that weren't years ago. Then the other idea you have to realize is 95% of cases of children diagnosed with autism is regressive autism. That means they were developing normal from up till about 12 to 36 months, but then something happened to them, something triggered, or little things built up over time, and now all of a sudden they have autism. So that's not genetic, that type of autism.
And I want to take just a second to talk about the fact that we have a huge self-advocate network of individuals who are in the autism community. They're on the spectrum, they're almost exclusively adults, and they're very high functioning, they're brilliant individuals, and I love and adore them. They don't always agree with the things that we say here on the show, and I'm thrilled and excited that that's the case. And I'm thrilled for them that they have the capacity to say, Shannon, I don't agree with you when you say that. That makes me so excited as a mother of a 14-year-old who's on the spectrum. Every time that someone on the spectrum says, I don't agree with you, I go, woohoo, you have the ability to convey to me that you don't agree, and then I can have a conversation and learn from you. And I think that we're three autism moms here talking. I think we can all agree that we want that for all of our kids, for all of our kids that are on the spectrum. And yet we do bunk heads from time to time because there are times when we will say something that those self-advocates think that we're saying that we're disavowing them, that we want to get rid of them, that we don't respect them. And Dara, maybe you can speak to this. When we say that we want to prevent autism in a small child, I know I'm talking about the really disabling aspects of autism.
Absolutely. I mean, I got a lot of comments that people were very upset at me saying I want to prevent them from, coming into the world. I mean, I don't understand how you equate trying to prevent an illness that is so debilitating for some children. There are many children that cannot walk, talk, eat unassisted. And, that was my son for 7 years. He couldn't speak, he couldn't make friends, he couldn't be in a classroom. It was so difficult. But for those people that you're referring to that, they're so lucky, they're functioning well, they're confident who they are, they have a Facebook account, they can send me messages, I'm happy for them that they feel good and they're completely entitled to their own opinion. I know that some of them believe that autism is genetic and it's part of their identity. And that's fine, but that's not a belief for a lot of parents who have children who regressed into autism.
Exactly.
So tell us about some of the things that people can do to minimize the risk then. Let's talk about that.
Oh, absolutely. So the first thing is definitely nutrition is paramount. Start eating better right now. If you already have a child on the spectrum, you want to have another one, or you're having your first. That's the most important thing. And try to, if you have a history of autoimmune issues, or if you're suffering from allergies or fibromyalgia or any kind of autoimmune illness, get to a nutritionist or a functional medicine doctor so they can really guide you, because you're going to have your vitamin D level checked and make sure it's not down at the minimum, which is 30. You want it up somewhere near by 60, 70. People who have thyroid issues, they're 6 times more likely to have a child with autism. And then there's a simple test. A lot of us know the MTHFR test, which is a genetic predisposition. Get tested because you can work around that genetic issue by taking certain supplements. But as far as just without going to a special doctor, eating organic, not keeping Wi-Fi on in your house, especially while you're sleeping. We don't know what that's doing. Do not have GMOs. Glyphosate is everywhere, which is why it's so important to go organic. So those are just a few of the major things that you could just start doing right away, besides changing over to green cleaning products, paying attention to your personal care products. Anything that you're going to come into contact with that you can control, make sure it's natural and healthy.
So you're talking about toxins in general.
Yes, absolutely, because they build up over time. We call them contributors. So you think, oh, this is not a big deal, but you layer one on top of another, and just eventually what people believe is happening to these children is these contributors build up over time, and then they meet a trigger. A trigger could be a virus, it could be a vaccine, it could be went into a field that had pesticides sprayed the day before. It could be many different things, but the idea is that your body finally has enough and the immune system implodes and the brain ceases to work properly anymore. And once that happens, it can be so hard to bring that child back from illness.
And so let's talk a little bit about when you had your son and he was diagnosed. I know a lot of people have to make the decision about whether they're going to have another child. Were you afraid that your second child was going to be on the autism spectrum? Were you afraid to conceive again?
I was desperately afraid. I wasn't even sure I was definitely going to have another child. I was cleaning out and doing all the things to Dylan. I did them to myself. So whether he did a new diet, a probiotic, IV vitamin C's, I went along with everything that he did. And no, for years I wasn't sure. But what did happen is I finally got to the point where I just said, I really want to have another child. I've been cleaning out for 3 years. I have to believe, whatever is meant to happen at that point, is going to happen. I've done all I can, because 3 years is a long time. And the most interesting thing happened. I got pregnant on my own right away. With my son, I had to do IVF. And a lot of women don't know, when you can't procreate, you're just not healthy enough to procreate. Nature, the body has a way of not allowing a woman to get pregnant. And I know that's a sensitive topic to talk about, but that's why if you're having trouble getting pregnant, a lot of this preconception clean out can help you get to the place where you can get pregnant naturally.
Yeah, and I want to point out too, for anybody who's watching, I know we were planning on having a second child. Jem was diagnosed with autism and we were afraid. But not because we didn't think we could love another child with autism. That wasn't it. It's that it takes so much of your resources to do right by your child. I was afraid that I didn't have enough strength, money, or resources to be able to do right by another child with autism. And I think a lot of people share that opinion.
Same with us.
Yeah. But and then on the other note, you think, oh, I want to have another child because you're not sure whether your child's going to progress to the point where they can live independently, and you're afraid, that you're not going to live, and you want to make sure that they have people around them.
Yes.
So it becomes that thing back and forth. But many people are in that mode right now where they're trying to decide, am I going to have another child? And you say that this planning begins before conception.
Ideally, but that doesn't mean that someone who finds themselves pregnant should feel like, oh, I shouldn't have this baby. By all means, no, because here's the other issue. Let's say you go through your pregnancy and you did nothing different because you just didn't know better, right? But then your baby is born and you start seeing what these practitioners call the soft signs. So these are chronic constipation, excessive reflux, excessive spitting up, excessive colic, eczema. These are all soft signs that the immune system is starting to get off kilter. Now, if you can right then and there stop and say, okay, instead of putting a prescription on this, some medicine, I'm going to bring them to a functional medicine doctor, a pediatrician, a holistic pediatrician, and I'm going to treat these holistically, and you start doing the diet and the supplements. That's what happened with my daughter. You bring them back very quickly because in essence, you're still preventing autism before it happens.
And I think everybody can agree, everyone can agree that getting our children as healthy as possible and ourselves as healthy as possible, how could that ever be a bad thing? Ever. And that's really what you're talking about, is getting yourself as healthy as possible, getting your child as healthy as possible, and reaping the benefits of that. Would you agree?
Exactly. I mean, we have epidemics of chronic illness in children. I just read an article this morning on Facebook about 3 kids in the same kindergarten class in California that have cancer. I mean, we just have epidemics of asthma, autism, ADHD, all these illnesses that when I was growing up, nobody had. I mean, nobody had anaphylactic allergies. So I think that all the things in the book can be used not just for autism, for other childhood chronic illnesses, just like you're saying, to get children healthy.
Absolutely.
What do you say to the people that don't believe it can be prevented? What are your, when they argue with you about this?
Well, I haven't really argued with them.
Okay.
Bad messages on Twitter sent directly to me. I try not to engage with people, because everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But if I'm having a healthy debate with someone, I say what you both were talking about earlier. How could it be a bad idea to eat better, to take supplements your body needs, to lower stress, to get fresh air? How could any of these things be a bad thing for your health?
Absolutely. What is your hope for the takeaway for this book that people will get from it?
The takeaway from this book is that you can empower yourself to make small changes over time, and you will see big benefits in the long run.
I think that that's a wonderful thing. So the book comes out on July 4th, but people can pre-order it right now. The book is available on Amazon. Are there other places where you can get it?
Oh, sure. It's available on barnesandnoble.com, Google Books. It's available everywhere pretty much. If you can also go to skyhorsepublishing.com's website, and you can see all the sellers that sell the book.
Okay. And there is a petition right now that is circulating for people asking for it to be taken off of Amazon. Is that getting any traction? Are you in any danger of having the book pulled?
I don't believe so. I mean, first of all, Amazon is in the business of selling books, and
Right.
That would be modern day book burning, deciding which books. And quite frankly, the book would probably just sell a ton better anyway, because everybody wants to read what they're not supposed to read.
Right.
And so the petition came out, and it basically people started buying the book a lot more because they wanted to support the book, and they wanted to send a message to Amazon that this book is needed.
Yes.
And that was a lovely thing for me to see that support. So I don't believe that the banning of the book on change.org is going to be an issue.
Okay. Well, I applaud you for the work
Yes.
that you've done with your child and for putting this together. I know that there are people write into us on a regular basis, and we've covered this topic before, that there are things that you can do to get your child as healthy as possible, get your body as healthy as possible, so that you have the healthiest children that you can possibly have. So I applaud you for doing that, and we want to encourage people. The book is How to Prevent Autism, and it is available now for pre-order, and it is officially out on July 4th. Dara, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back to finish out the show. Stick with us.
Being part of this community is really important to a mom with a son like Jackson, because it really does take a village, and you need so much support, you know, to help bring out all of the amazing qualities and skills and talents that our children have. So I'm just very grateful to everybody who was a part of this.
I think it helps with all sorts of that self-esteem, social skills. They seem to communicate a little bit with each other, and they had a lot of friends. The helpers were phenomenal, and I think the social skills for sure, because they worked together and they did a couple group things across the floor, and they sang songs together, and I yeah, for sure, I think it's a really huge deal. A great program.
What programs like this show is the person is in front of what we call today a disorder. I think what we're finding is that these sorts of brain challenges that make people unique can actually be gifts in ways we haven't discovered in the rest of society to bring them out. So when you see a program like this and you see the kids dancing, having fun, and making up jokes, making up the story. I was here when they did that. That was so amazing to watch, because they were all focused, they were all present, and they were all laughing, they were all getting into the creation of this story. And that to me sort of broke the barrier to say, no, first we're dealing with people, and then we're dealing with the challenges.
And welcome back. We were just talking over the break about the last guest and the controversy over this.
I think it's hard on everyone when we talk about possibilities, and it's hard for all of us not to second guess ourselves. I find myself going, why didn't I know this?
Right,
Why didn't I
right,
take this?
exactly.
And I was working.
Regret. And regret is a terrible thing to feel.
And yet I don't in any way regret who my son is and where he is, or our journey. Now, if you had asked me when he was 3.5, I was in a much different place. And I think that there are different phases to autism and how you feel about it. I see when I am at events, like we're going to be at an event on Saturday, Stephanie's Day is happening this week. And what an amazing family.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know Stephanie's Day here in LA, it's at CBS Studios, and it's a great event for
it is a great event.
Our families.
And started by a family who wanted to honor their child. And Stephanie is the sweetest young woman. And
Steve Malden, who's the general manager of KCBS and KCAL.
Yeah, and especially want to support that family this
Steve
year
and Sheila,
because they've had a particularly devastating loss in their family in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, really?
And I really want to
know
support them and be there. But Stephanie is fine, and they're doing Stephanie's Day. But I think there are different phases along the way, and I know I'll be there at the event, and there will be people who will come up who've newly diagnosed children, and they want to hear the hope, right? They want to hear what's possible, and they want to hear what you can do. And I sat next to a woman at the fireworks at Disneyland the other day who had come to California from Louisiana because her child was participating in Surfers Healing, and I was telling her there's hope, and she was like, yay, I want to hear, because there's a certain point where you want to hear about the hope.
Sure.
For the families that are older, sometimes when you tell them about the hope, it hurts.
It does, because they feel like that ship has sailed.
They feel like they missed it.
Right.
And even for me, there's places where there are things that happen now, and I go, oh, if I'd known that, what could we have done? And da-da-da-da-da. I think that's a part of the journey. But I do want to say to everybody out there that, we all need to be respectful of when people are on whatever their part of the journey is. And I do believe that there is a promised land of acceptance. No matter how your child is, I've seen it with people who have kids who are profoundly affected. I've seen them come to the place of acceptance where they go, this is my kid. And they stop with anything else, but this is my kid, and that is the sweet space. Yeah. Now, I'm really lucky because I feel like I'm in that spot, but I'm in that spot with a kid that is remarkable.
Right.
And I don't have to wipe his butt.
Right. And I have done everything. I think I was one of the moms who did almost everything biomatically.
Absolutely.
And my child did not necessarily recover to the degree that I had hoped.
Yes.
But I am at a place of acceptance of where he is now.
And it's a lovely thing to see them for who they are and in all their glory. I think that's a very freeing thing. And if you're not there, don't beat yourself up about it. It's not like a timeline and you have to be there by a certain time.
Right.
But when you're ready to get there, I think that there are people willing to help you to get there and to be in the peace of that and to put the hot rock down of what could have been.
Yeah, and also I think one thing that we have to avoid as moms is the blame game, blaming ourselves for something we didn't do.
Yeah.
Like if you look back and go, well, I didn't eat holistic food when I was pregnant. I didn't, avoid pesticides and things like that and toxins around the house. I didn't do this and this and this for my child. What you're doing then is just carrying this enormous burden of blame, which is just never going to be a benefit.
And it's hard not to. I started to say when I was pregnant with Jem, I was working in a school, a high school. There was a Project Y school, and they were doing construction, active construction, while I was working, and I was a complainer. And like there was one day that I came into my English class and they were working on the roof and there was white stuff raining down on us. And I took my class out and said, we're going to the library. And I complained to the principal and said, I am a pregnant woman. And I don't know what, but I'm also a person and I'm responsible for the safety of these kids. How can you be? And then they would tile the floor and it would smell so bad that kids were getting dizzy and I was pregnant. And I would take the kids out and say, I'm not exposing my child to this, although I would be for a few minutes. And I think about that. I do.
I think about the fact that we redid the floors in our house when Wyatt was an infant. I think about the fact that I painted his room,
and
while
you
he
will.
was an infant.
And I think the truth of it is that we all will. And the honesty is to say to yourself when you do that, I have to stop myself and say, what am I serving right now? I'm not serving him when I go down this rabbit hole. And then I put myself into some form of action, either help somebody else or help my kid or help myself instead of going down that.
Right.
Because you can hear the toilet flushing in the background when your head goes that places. But it's hard. And I think we all have to acknowledge that.
We do.
Now,
and move forward and not live in the past, not compare.
And take out,
particularly
not compare. You are the queen of saying that. We run our own race,
run our
not
own
compare.
race.
It's hard.
There's always going to be a child that is doing better than your child, and always a child that is not doing as well as your child.
You know what my grandmother always used to say, the thing about if everybody went someplace together and everybody threw all their troubles into a basket and passed them all around, you'd still take yours back over everybody else's.
I've also heard comparison is the source of all suffering.
There you go. There you go.
We're not all George and Amal Clooney that just had perfect twins at the perfect time and we don't even know what's really in those stories.
Yeah,
right?
we don't know. And it's not.
You look at the lifestyles of the rich and famous and you think, wow, how do they all seem to manage it so perfectly?
Yeah.
Not
I know some
fantasy.
I know some people that are rich and famous and it's not all
exactly,
fantasy.
as do I.
I'm going to say my grandmother always used to say, and they still squat behind two shoes.
That's
so
right.
Anyway, we're out of time. I want to give a quick shout out to Fullerton Cares, who was just named the Charity of the Year for the second time in a row by the Women's Club of Fullerton. Fullerton is an amazing place. I say this all the time.
It's like an epicenter of wonderful things.
I was just there the other night, and my son and I were driving through Fullerton, and I was like, Jen, we got to move here sometime. We got to, this is where we got to retire. I want to retire to Fullerton. It's beautiful, and it gets autism in a way that I think few other communities do.
Yeah, it really does.
And Fullerton Cares is a big part of that.